Hey Stalker, this is Evan from Stock Music Musician with my review of Reason 11. It's finally here, and this is actually really the most confounding version of Reason I've ever had to review. I think I've been doing these reviews going back to at least Reason 9, maybe Reason 8. I've been using Reason since Reason 2, 2.5, so that's 15 years. And this is the toughest cookie to crack because in some ways it's the most fundamentally unique version of Reason. And in some ways, it's the most disappointing version of Reason. So what I've decided to instead do for this review, instead of just making a one-size-fits-all approach, is that I think really to understand Reason 11, you need to analyze it from the perspective of different types of users. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I think of Reason 11. If you're a brand new user that wants to use Reason as your principal tool for making music, then I'm going to talk about using Reason if you just want to use it as a plugin. The third thing I'm going to talk about is if you're upgrading to Reason 11 from Reason 9 or below, and finally, if you're upgrading from Reason 10. Now, I'm going to put timestamps down below. Just go down there so if you only want to listen to one of those, just skip right to that point. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. The other thing I want to say is thanks for watching. If you want to get all the latest Reason 11 news, be sure to hit the subscribe button below, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know what your thoughts are on Reason 11 now that it's finally here. Oh, and I got to clarify one thing. Pretty much what I'm talking about in this video is the standard version of Reason 11. I'm not talking about the light version, and I'm not talking about the suite bundle that's fully loaded with all of those plugins. I mentioned them a few times throughout the video, but really that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just the standard version of Reason. Okay, so the two big changes for Reason 11 are a new phaser and a new kind of chorus plugin. And both of them are awesome. They are first-class plugins. The chorus sounds great. There are multiple different modes to it. I've really liked the Bucket Brigade delay version of the chorus. It sounds incredibly lush and it's really easy to dial in great sounds. The grain chorus is also just this kind of like trippy, glitchy sound. Really gooey and nice and modern, which is just, I'm digging that. And then the phaser filter flanger, called Sweeper, I think is what it's called, is also next level. It's probably one of the best phasers and flangers I've ever used. And it's a really cool filter for doing the curves you want them to do instead of having to draw in automation all over the place and then getting sort of dynamic reactions with it because it's got a built-in audio follower, which lets you just create these really cool modulation patterns. And it also works as a tremolo. Before you could also do a tremolo with a pulverizer, but I think you can get much better, more interesting shapes with the ability to draw on the curves and have the audio trigger. And so, I mean, these two are absolutely first-class instruments that are great in Reason, but also that you're going to really be using, if you're using Reason as a plugin, you're going to be using these in other DAWs. These are absolutely go-to phasers and choruses. And the other big changes, I would say, I mean, they've got the EQ. That's the main EQ from the mixer. It's a good EQ. Nothing special. And you've got the compressor, which is a good compressor, but it's nothing special. Most DAWs have very comparable ones. But they did give you the master bus compressor, which is actually really nice to use on drum kits and other buses, I guess, whether it's a drum bus or a guitar bus or something, just a couple of dB of compression there, maybe even a little less, really glues things together nicely. And I can see using that a lot. I'm kind of surprised by what they haven't included. There's still no stock coloring EQ or compressor. You know, there's plenty of third-party ones on the market. I'm just kind of surprised there's not one in Reason. Similarly, I'm surprised Scream is a great distortion, but I'm kind of surprised they haven't done another. The guitar and bass amps in Reason suck, and I'm surprised they haven't upgraded those ever, or at least added expansion kits. And I'm sort of surprised they don't have a modern sampler. I mean, I'm not sort of surprised. I'm absolutely shocked. That's one of the biggest places that Reason is falling short right now. Again, there's third-party solutions to all of these, but I'm just sort of surprised they went for a phaser flanger and a chorus effect of all the things they could do. All right, so now let's move on to the actual kind of configuration stuff. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is what do I think about Reason 11 for new users who want to use Reason as their main way of making music. Well, I think Reason 11, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. It's got a lot of great sounds loaded into it. It's a pretty good price. I think it's fairly intuitive and creative for musicians, but the thing is that it really doesn't scale with complex types of compositions. So you have to think about how you want to use this. If you're mainly making EDM and hip hop, I think that Reason 11 is actually a pretty viable choice. If you don't imagine your songs having more than maybe 8 or 9 different tracks in them, I think there's a lot to be said for Reason. It's a creative, pretty streamlined experience that allows you incredible flexibility. I'd also say that if you're fundamentally like somebody who's into modular synthesis or maybe a guitar player with a lot of effects pedals, I think you'll catch on to the design flow of Reason. That's what brought me in. And I think there's a lot to enjoy. You'll have a lot of fun making music in Reason. And I think you'll make very good sounding music in Reason 11. Also, if you're a new user, I've put together a beginner's guide to all of the synths and devices and everything in Reason. There's a link down there to download it. It's basically just a cheat sheet, my thoughts on everything that's included in Reason. You can figure out whether you should use this piece or that instrument, that effect, or whether it's kind of just a legacy effect not worth using. One final thought for people that are wanting to use Reason as your main tool to create music is that, when it comes to doing bigger music, bigger productions, the reason Reason doesn't work well is because it doesn't scale. The essential nature of its creativity and its modular nature in building these cool racks that connect into each other is also its Achilles heel, because it makes it really hard to manage your projects as they grow beyond a certain number of tracks, and individual changes that you make just start to take too long. And so if you don't think you're ever going to expand beyond a certain amount of tracks, then it's very worth considering. All right, moving on to the next category, we have people that are principally thinking about using Reason as a plugin. So you can get Reason now and run it in any major DAW, and it runs really well. It's pretty simple and straightforward to load. Basically, once you install Reason, and I'll do a video about this, but once you install Reason 11, you just go to your DAW, and it should appear there in your plugin folder, and you just pop it up and you start having this rack that you can play with, and it's really cool. It is a pretty good implementation. And one note though, right now at press release, it does not work in Logic. Propellerhead Software says that they are working on a update that will allow Reason 11 to work in Logic, but it should work in every other DAW. So if you use Logic, don't get Reason as a plugin, because it's not going to work right now. And we don't know exactly when the new plugin will be released, or the update of Reason, so that it will work as a plugin. The other thing, as a plugin user, is just like, what sort of value are you getting? Well, if you want to experiment with modular synthesis, Reason isn't really fully modular, but it's got a lot of things that are close, and it's a much more digestible package. It's basically, you get to kind of come up with these really cool devices that work together in these lush and organic ways. And I also think that their sound set flows really well with a lot of DAWs, because the sounds that are in Reason are kind of, I would say, almost not generic. That's not what I want to say, but that they fit really good into the background of parts. There's very few like first class leads in Reason, but there's a lot of really good pads and basses. And so they kind of just will layer together really well with your DAW, and it's going to give you something sort of very different from what you have. And I think it'll kind of revitalize and inspire you to make interesting music. The other thing about using Reason in another operating system is that you get access to the better workflow of that operating system. Almost every workstation, digital audio workstation. Almost every DAW I've ever used is more streamlined and efficient than Reason. And so by using Reason as a plugin, you kind of tuck all of those inefficiencies away into the plugin, and you can tap into the efficiencies of the new DAW. This hybrid system is really intuitive. It's really powerful. Plus, most DAWs also have better sequencers where you can enter your MIDI data and program all that in than Reason does. So all in all, I think that's a really good, really reasonable investment to look into. Similarly, you might want to pick up my free beginner's guide to all the devices in Reason. All the cheat sheets, there's a link down below. Go get it. Another thing to think about, though, is what are your options? And I think that when it comes to Reason, the Reason intro version is an incredible value. I'm going to do a future video on that. But I think as a plugin, that is really probably one of the best deals in music right now. So, but that's a story for another day. The other thing, though, is like, what else is out there? Well, Complete by Native Instruments is a damn fine piece of software. That probably is also worth a full-on shootout video. Reason is about $200 less than the basic version of Complete. And I would say it's not as good, but I would say it's also quite good for the price, especially if the $600 for Native Instruments Complete is just too much. Now let's turn to the next category of people that we're going to review. Have you been using Reason 9 or below? Well, if you have, then you should definitely think about upgrading to Reason 11. A lot was added in Reason 10, a lot of content. You got the ability to actually use VSTs with good performance. And now in Reason 11, they're not adding anything. But you've got everything from Reason 9, everything from Reason 10, everything from Reason 11. And presumably there's going to be a few more iterations of Reason 11 that are going to add more wonderful new features. You're also going to get a lot of workflow improvements. They're small, but they do add up. It's certainly a way better workflow experience than in Reason 9. Between the automation curves, the smart zooming of the grid, just all sorts of little improvements that have been added in over Reason 10 and Reason 11. I think it's certainly a much better product than Reason 9, and I think it's worth it to upgrade. In addition, there's just a lot more sounds that you get for your buck. A lot more bang, if you will. Finally, though, we have the users of Reason 10, like myself. I think that Reason 11, if you're on Reason 10 right now and you use Reason 10 as your primary DAW, I think it's a ripoff, and I wouldn't buy it. I mean, I did buy it, but that's only for you guys. I wouldn't have bought it myself if I didn't run this channel and didn't offer, tips and tricks on how to use Reason, because to me, it didn't make much sense. Now, there is the bundle, the suite, which is kind of a good deal, but I had about half the extensions already in the suite, so for me, it just didn't make sense to go and get Reason 11, just, as a regular everyday musician. Now, as somebody that runs a channel on YouTube, yeah, I went out and got it. And it's definitely better than Reason 11. I mean, the workflow improvements are nice. The 2 new effects, great. And the ability to have the bus compressor on anything, great. I'm probably going to mostly use it in plugin mode once they make a version for Logic when I'm making music for my own. In the meantime, I do enjoy making music in Reason still. I've always enjoyed making music in Reason. It's just the workflow issues, and they really haven't demonstrated much commitment to really making Reason a modern-looking DAW. And they kind of just need to go from the ground up and do that. That being said, I think that Reason 11 is, it's the best version of Reason ever, undoubtedly, but probably also one of the more disappointing releases. So with that said, I'd give it overall an 8 out of 10. I think that there are some users that are really going to get a lot out of it, but there's not that much to be excited about. at the moment. I'm hoping that they do some very significant point releases. They have had a history of introducing all sorts of new features and instruments, and like Reason 9.5 added VSTs. I think Reason 10.4 added rhythmic and monosynth, which are two of my favorite plugins. So, new sounds are coming, I'm sure. I hope they really pack in the content more on the back end, because right now just Reason 11 doesn't justify its upgrade for Reason 10 users. All right. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this, be sure, again, to like that little thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button so you can get all the latest, greatest Reason 11 news. Thanks so much.